Every night at 3:11 a.m., I wake up without an alarm, without a sound, just a feeling. And every night, when I turn toward the window, there he is again, a tall, unmoving silhouette watching me through the glass, closer than the night before. Last night, he smiled. If you're enjoying this story so far, please subscribe and leave a like. It helps me create more horror stories for you. I used to sleep through anything. Thunderstorms, late night traffic, my upstairs neighbor dropping weights at 2 in the morning. None of it ever woke me, but for the last 13 nights, something wakes me with absolute precision. 3:11 a.m., not 3:10, not 3:12. It's always 3:11, and when my eyes open, the first thing I feel is the pressure, a quiet, invisible heaviness in the room, as if someone else is breathing the same air but refusing to make a sound. On the first night, I thought it was a nightmare. I sat up, rubbed my eyes, reached for my phone. The screen glowed, 3:11, and then I looked toward the window. A figure stood outside. A man, at least that's what I told myself, facing my apartment. Motionless, slightly leaning toward the glass. Too still to be normal. Too patient. He didn't move when I turned on the lamp. Didn't flinch when the light washed over the room. He simply stood there, head tilted as if studying me. I froze. My mind picked the safest explanation available. Someone drunk, lost, maybe mistaking my balcony for theirs. I lived on the 3rd floor, though. That explanation made no sense, but fear makes you generous with logic. I refused to stand and check. I refused to approach the window. All I did was pull the blanket up, close my eyes, and force myself to believe that if I didn't acknowledge him, he'd go away. By morning, the window was empty. I tried to forget it. Work was a good excuse. Stress, I told myself. A dream, a trick of the dark. But the second night came, and at 3:11 a.m., my eyes snapped open again. The pressure was back. The heaviness. That sense of a presence that doesn't belong. My heart thudded loudly as I turned toward the window. He was there again. Same spot. Same absolute stillness. But now, he was closer. Not pressed against the glass, but close enough that I could make out the faint shape of his face. Or rather, the absence of one. It was too smooth, too uniform, as if someone had sketched a person and never finished the details. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. By day 3, panic squeezed my chest even before bedtime. I sat awake at midnight, then 1, then 2, inhaling shallow breaths as the minutes crawled toward 3:11. My phone sat in my hand, flashlight ready, and when the clock turned, a soft tap hit the glass, not loud, not demanding, almost polite. A greeting. The figure stood in the same position, but it felt different this time. More aware, more present. I raised my phone and switched on the flashlight. The beam hit the window, reflected slightly, but the man didn't react. I angled the light downward, then upward. That was when I noticed his hands. They were hanging at his sides. Elongated, thin, fingers too long to be human. They twitched once, like a reflex. I scrambled out of bed and turned every light in the apartment on. After that night, I started sleeping with them all on. Not that it helped, because each night, he returned at exactly 3:11, and each night, he stood a little closer. By the 6th night, I called the police. I tried to explain everything in a calm, rational way, which was impossible, given that every sentence sounded like sleep-deprived paranoia. They sent a patrol. 2 officers checked the perimeter, walked around the building, inspected the area beneath my window. Nothing. No footprints in the dirt. No smudges on the glass. No sign anyone had been there. One of the officers gently suggested I take a break from caffeine. The other one asked if I lived alone. I hated how both questions made me feel. That night, I stayed at a friend's house, and still I woke up at 3:11, not in my apartment, not near the window, but on her couch, sitting upright, eyes open, The pressure was there too. The silence that feels crowded. The sense that someone stands just behind your shoulder. My friend snored quietly across the room. Everything looked normal. I told myself I was safe. That distance mattered. That whatever stood at my window couldn't follow me until the next morning. When I returned home, I stepped into my bedroom, froze, and felt the air leave my lungs. There was something new on the window. A handprint, long-fingered, smeared downward, as if dragging along the glass. I touched it with trembling fingers. It was cold. Too cold. Night 9 was the first time he moved. I woke sharply, gasping for air like someone had dipped me underwater and pulled me back up. 3:11, glowing on the screen. I didn't want to look toward the window. My whole body begged me not to, but I did. He stood closer than ever, so close that if the glass wasn't there, he could have reached out and touched my face. For the first time, I saw part of his expression, a curve where the mouth should have been, a smile. Slowly, deliberately, he lifted one hand. A long two-bent finger tapped the glass once, then twice. Then he tilted his head, as if asking a question. I whispered I don't even know what. Maybe a prayer, maybe a plea, maybe just fear leaking out of my throat. He didn't react, but then he leaned forward, pressing his face against the window, distorting the unfinished skin where features should be. That's when I realized something. He wasn't watching me through the window. He was looking at the window, studying it, examining it, testing it, as if deciding how to get in. I backed away slowly, heart pounding so hard it shook my ribs. I grabbed my phone, ready to call someone, anyone, and then I froze. Because my phone screen wasn't showing my reflection. It showed the reflection from the window. From his side, and in that reflection, he had eyes, two black, hollow pits, staring directly at me. My phone slipped from my hand, and outside the window, his smile widened. I didn't sleep after that. I sat in the living room with every light on, wrapped in a blanket, hands trembling so hard I couldn't hold a cup steady. My phone lay on the floor where it had fallen, screen cracked, reflection frozen in my mind. Those dark, impossible eyes staring back at me. Part of me wanted to leave the apartment immediately, pack a bag, run to a hotel, never come back. But the other part, the part that had lived here for years, that paid bills and worked every day, refused to surrender my home to something I didn't understand. I wasn't sure which part of me was brave and which was stupid. By late morning, exhaustion pressed down on me like a physical weight. I showered, ate something bland, and tried to convince myself I'd imagined the reflection. I told myself stress could do strange things. Lack of sleep could warp perception. Repeating those lies made the hours bearable. I returned to my room around noon. The window was quiet, ordinary. Just sunlight on glass. No handprints. No figure outside. I pulled the curtains closed anyway. Throughout the day, I researched everything I could think of: sleep paralysis, hypnagogic hallucinations, window reflections, shadow people, intruder psychology. Nothing fit. Hallucinations don't leave handprints. Intruders don't vanish from third-floor balconies. And reflections don't change what's behind the glass. At around 6 p.m., I finally dozed off on the couch. I woke up 20 minutes later, heart hammering, gasping like I'd run a marathon. No dreams, no noises, just the sudden, suffocating pressure again. But it wasn't 3:11 a.m. It was daylight. And that terrified me more than anything. I stood slowly, every breath shallow, and scanned the apartment. Nothing out of place, nothing obviously wrong, until I looked at the hallway mirror. There was condensation on it, as if someone had stood inches away, breathing. That night, I didn't even try to sleep. I sat in the kitchen with headphones on, music loud enough to drown out thoughts. But the pressure still crept in like static behind the skin, like a room filling with an unseen presence. I checked the time, constantly. 2:58, 3:03, 3:07. My stomach twisted as the minutes crawled. I didn't want to go to the bedroom. I didn't want to see the window. But not looking felt worse. Like turning my back on a predator. 3:10. I forced myself to walk toward the bedroom. Door. 3:11. I stepped in, froze. He wasn't outside. He was standing behind the window, inside my room. No, he wasn't fully inside. Not yet. Half of him was still outside the glass, like the window was slicing him in two. But his upper body leaned through the pane as if it wasn't solid, his face too smooth, too empty, tilted toward me. I stumbled backward, nearly falling. The air felt cold, the kind of cold that hits bone first. My mind refused to understand what I was seeing. He lifted one long hand, fingers bending at wrong angles, and pressed it flat against the inside surface of the glass. Except, the glass didn't crack, didn't ripple. It simply accepted him. I couldn't look away. The sight routed me in place like a pinned insect. Slowly, deliberately, he leaned forward, until his head was completely inside the room. Light didn't fall on his skin. Instead, shadows clung to him, shaping him the way darkness shapes a nightmare. His mouth stretched, forming that impossible smile again. "Why?" I whispered, not even knowing what I wanted to ask. The space around him vibrated slightly. Not sound, just motion, like heat on pavement. And then he spoke. Not with a voice, not with breath. His words pressed directly into my mind. Cold and damp and wrong. "You see me now?" My knees buckled. He fully stepped backward, back beyond the window until the glass separated us again, as if demonstrating that he could leave whenever he wanted, enter whenever he chose. "You are awake." His thoughts slid against mine like slimy fingers. Exploring, testing. I clutched my head, gasping. "I watch. You look. We meet." "I don't want to meet you," I choked out. His head tilted, expression unreadable. "You looked first." My blood turned to ice. Had I? The first night had I looked out the window and seen something in the dark? Something I didn't understand. Something that noticed. His hollow eyes blinked once slow, stretching too long. "Now it is easier." What is easier? What is easier? His smile pulled wider, skin stretching unnaturally, crossing. A tremor ran through me. I backed out of the room, step by step, never taking my eyes off him. But when I blinked, he was gone. Just empty glass, moonlight, a quiet night, as if he had never been there. The rest of the night I sat on the living room floor, hugging my knees, terrified to move, or even breathe too loudly. At sunrise, I packed a suitcase. I didn't care where I went. Anywhere was better than here. But as I zipped the bag, something on the bedroom door caught my attention. A smear. Dark. Long. I stepped closer with dread, twisting my gut. It was a drag mark. One long finger had traced the wood, leaving a faint indentation, as if testing its strength. Underneath the mark, scratched lightly into the paint, was a word. CLOSR. My throat tightened until breathing hurt. I stumbled backward, hitting the wall. That was when my cracked phone buzzed to life. A notification, no number, no caller ID, just a single message. Tonight. The timestamp read, 3:11 a.m., sent exactly 24 hours early. I didn't sleep after the face pressed itself from inside the mirror. I sat on the floor until dawn, listening to the faint scraping from behind the glass. Not loud enough to be a threat, just loud enough for me to know it was still there. Waiting by sunrise, the scraping stopped. The mirror became perfectly still again. I wasn't sure if daylight weakened it, or simply made it less interested. But one thing was clear. I had to understand what this thing was, before it understood me better. I grabbed my phone and recorded everything I remembered. Its overlong fingers, the way its mouth seemed stitched into a smile, the slight fog it left behind with every breath on its side of the mirror. I said its name out loud, even though I didn't know if it had one. The dweller. I hoped naming it would make it feel smaller. It didn't. It felt like it made the room darker. At noon, I forced myself to test the mirror again. I knocked on the glass. Gently. Nothing. I touched it. Normal temperature. Still nothing. My reflection stared back at me in perfect silence. But I could see something was off. The reflection of my room was wrong. Not drastically. Just a detail. Tiny detail that made my stomach twist in the reflection. The door behind me was slightly open. In real life it was closed. I froze. Slowly turned. Door closed. I turned back to the mirror. Door still open in the reflection. And now, there was a hand holding the edge of the door, inside the reflection's world. Long fingers. Gray skin. I stumbled backwards so fast I hit the bookshelf. The crash made my heart slam into my ribs. I blinked once, twice, staring at the mirror. The reflection corridor door closed. The hand slipped away. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I nearly screamed. It was my friend Lena, texting. You okay? You didn't answer last night. Want me to come over? I typed. No, don't. I deleted it. Typed again. I'm fine. But I didn't send it. Because I wasn't fine. I was trapped in a room with a window to something that could reach through reality. And I didn't know how far it could reach. That night, the mirror woke me. Not with sound, with light. Soft. White light pulsed from inside the glass like a heartbeat. Slow. Methodical. Calling me. I felt myself walking toward it before I realized I'd stood up. Something about that light made my brain feel warm. Like it was massaging my thoughts into soft clay. The surface of the mirror shimmered like water. I didn't touch it. It touched me. A palm, pressed from inside against the glass, against my reflection's palm. Except, it wasn't my hand. It just pretended to be. The proportions were wrong. The fingers too tapered. The knuckles too smooth. The dweller had mimicked me. Perfectly enough to fool anyone glancing. Not perfectly enough to fool me. Its fake reflection whispered soundlessly. Its mouth didn't move, but I heard it inside my thoughts. Let me in. My entire body locked. My vision flickered at the edges. I couldn't breathe. The glass stretched outward like thin rubber, bowing into the room. The reflection's hand pushed farther, skin almost slipping through. I whispered, no, and the light vanished. The mirror snapped back into its frame. My reflection returned. Normal. Almost normal. There was a phrase written in fog across the inside of the glass. You already did. I didn't realize the meaning until morning. I walked to the bathroom and turned on the faucet. No reflection. The mirror above the sink showed nothing. Not me. Not the room. Just an empty void of gray static. Something moved through it, but not me. My throat tightened as a realization struck me like ice water. The mirror didn't want to come out. It wanted me to go in. Or worse, it already took part of me. Panic surged through me so hard I dropped to my knees. My heartbeat sounded like distant knocking inside my skull. A notification popped on my phone. Lena again. Hey, I'm worried. I'm coming over. Before I could type, another message appeared. From my number, sent to her. Doors open. Come in. My stomach collapsed. The dweller had my reflection. My voice. My phone. My digital presence. My identity. I sprinted to the front door. Locked it. Engaged the chain. Pressed my back to it. A shadow moved in the hallway mirror. The dweller mimicked the motion of my shoulders rising and falling, but its smile didn't match mine. Too wide, too hungry. It placed its hand against the glass. I heard scraping again, only this time, it wasn't coming from behind the mirror. It was coming from inside the walls, as if it had already slipped through some crack deeper in the house, as if the mirror was just the start. A text buzzed. On my phone, another message from my number, sent automatically. I can't wait to see you. Lena. Then another. I'm not alone. Wind rattled the window. Except it wasn't wind, the sound repeated rhythmically, like fingers tapping the glass. From the outside, I looked at the window, a face pressed against it. Not mine, not the dwellers. Mirror-face, something worse, something that had learned what fear looked like on me, and had made a better version. The tapping grew louder. The walls began to echo with breathing, not mine. Multiple, slow, hungry. I backed away until I reached the center of the room, surrounded by glass surfaces on all side screens, picture frames, polished metal. All of them began to shimmer. All of them began to reflect things that weren't in the room. Faces, hands, wet footprints, broken gestures, too many reflections. No escape. Every surface was a door. Every door was opening, and through the overlapping reflections, one whisper echoed in perfect unison. You brought us home. The last thing I saw before every reflection turned black was myself, smiling back at me from every angle. But none of them blinked.